Tanse netute magtiar Wheatley Nisagasun, Opasquiac Uchanina. Tawau, welcome to APTN National News for this Friday, February 20th. The third week of the inquest into Aisha Hudson's death continued in Winnipeg. Chris Butler, the first expert witness, took to the stand Thursday to testify, and Julia Ross attended.
Aisha Hudson was a 16-year-old girl shot and killed by Constable Kyle Pradnuk on April 8, 2020, following a liquor store robbery and high-speed pursuits. Chris Butler, an expert witness in police use of force training, and risk assessments, was the only witness who testified on Thursday. He said the Independent Investigation Unit of Manitoba, the IIU, did not complete a traffic reconstruction investigation. Butler says the reconstruction uses a vehicle's computer data to assess steering wheel and braking inputs and acceleration speeds. And without the information from the investigation, we are left with no concrete answers to what the vehicle was doing. Butler said the lack of the traffic reconstruction is concerning because whenever there is an incident where death or bodily harm is experienced, the only way to fully understand important details of the event is to know what the vehicle involved was doing. Butler also said Pradnuk's actions would be consistent with proper police practices. However, when asked if there are any frailties in the assumptions that Butler based his report on, Butler said there were. The inquest is now adjourned until next week. Butler was the first expert witness to testify during the inquest. Julia Ross, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew says strong steps are moving the Port of Churchill Plus project forward. This after the federal government announced what they're calling a market-sounding study to gather industry input on its long-term potential. The study was commissioned by the federal and provincial governments, the Major Projects Office, and the Indigenous-led Arctic Gateway Group, who currently owns the port. The study will ask private sector businesses what's possible for mining, energy, potash, and other resource projects in the region. Kinew says liquefied natural gas, or LNG, is one area of interest for long-term growth, with Indigenous governments engaged in the conversation. He says while the province is working with First Nations and the Manitoba Métis Federation, not everyone is supportive.
We want to see a base commodity that can power this infrastructure for the next generation. That might be LNG. It might be another product, but I am talking about LNG because I want Manitobans to start thinking about that. What does that mean for our province? When we were in Churchill a few weeks ago, we heard a lot of concerns and questions about the environment, a lot of concerns and questions about, okay, well, if this is good for the whole province, how is the North and Churchill specifically going to get their respective share of that? And then, of course, questions about engagement and opportunity. So there's a lot of things that need to be wrangled as we move forward in this. And I just want Manitobans to start thinking about it now.
The federal government expects the market-sounding study to be completed by March 31st, and Kinew says results should be available by the summer. The Yukon government has given the green light for a copper exploration project in and around Whitehorse to expand its work. Gladiator Metals' Whitehorse copper project includes 4 target areas, 3 of which are within Whitehorse. The company will scale up from a Class 1 license, which permits minimal work, to a Class 3, which allows larger drilling programs with higher potential to cause disturbances. Residents living near the project areas have raised concern about noise and other disturbances. The exploration program is also located within the traditional territories of the Kwanlin First Nation and the Ta'aquashan Council. We reached out to both First Nations for comment, but didn't receive a response by airtime. The federal government recently released information saying 759 businesses were removed from the government's Indigenous Business Directory in 2024 and 2025. But there are differing opinions on what these numbers actually mean. APTN's Fraser Needham has that story.
The data was provided as part of a response to a written question submitted in Parliament by Conservative MP Billy Moran. In a recent interview with APTN News, opposition critic for Crown Indigenous Relations Jamie Schmale said, the numbers show there continues to be big problems with fraudulent abuse of the government's Indigenous procurement program.
As we found out through a study in the previous Parliament, there was fraud being taken place, in particular the Arrive Can or the Arrive Scam app that showed that there was massive fraud in that whole program, and the fact that there was very little, if any, Indigenous participation in that, and yet there were companies claiming Indigenous identity.
But Canadian Council for Indigenous Business CEO Tabitha Bull has a different take. She noted of the businesses removed, only a small percentage, 78 businesses, were taken off because they did not meet the eligibility criteria. Bull said a much larger group are legitimate, but were removed from the list because the government was unable to make contact.
There were many First Nation individual-owned businesses listed there, community-owned businesses listed there, businesses that we know that are legitimate Indigenous businesses. And then, when you really go and look into the reasons and see that there was a very small percentage actually that didn't meet the certification requirements. Interestingly, nowhere does it have a category called fraudulent.
Abuse of the government's Indigenous procurement contracting system has been a hot topic in recent years, with media stories of various companies misrepresenting themselves in order to get on the list. However, one thing both Bull and Schmale agree on is the need to take the verification process for Indigenous businesses out of the government's hands.
There are lots of Indigenous organizations already set up that have offered to help. They have come to us. They, I would assume, went to the government and had the same conversations, which has let us be involved. Indigenous identity is what we do. This is something that can be done with organizations already set up. We don't need a new bureaucracy. We can lean on Indigenous organizations themselves, entities that have proven track records.
Bull said it is something her organization has been lobbying the government on for years.
I think it should be held by an Indigenous organization. We look at, an example in Australia where they have an organization called Supply Nation that does this, and that the government then does their purchases through that marketplace. I think we're 8 years in that discussion of how it would be transferred to an organization or various organizations.
Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Ottawa.
And we take you to Toronto to talk Indigenous fashion, that and more right after the break. Cheskwa. Come on in, Pete de Guerre. Nunavut communities are throwing their hats in the ring for the chance to win the Kraft Hockeyville Canada 2026 competition. As APTN's Justin Hardy tells us, Nunavut may not have the population numbers of bigger places, but don't count them out.
That is all based around community involvement and support.
Kraft Hockeyville 2026 is a national contest that sees community hockey arenas compete for the grand prize of $250,000 for upgrades and a preseason NHL hockey game. The first phase of the competition needs community members to nominate their own arenas by expressing how important it is for their community. Iqaluit's Arctic Winter Games Arena was built 25 years ago, and the city's recreation director, Breton McNeil, says its upkeep needs are growing.
It's an older facility, and common issues with aging infrastructure in arenas is with the ice plant. So there is a lot of repairs and maintenance that could go into improving daily operations, as well as we would love to see the purchase of a new electric Zamboni to also have stationary up there as well, because our Zamboni is getting old as well.
To take part, residents are encouraged to go to the Kraft Hockeyville website and explain why their community needs the prize. There are some much larger communities taking part in the competition who may have higher numbers of community members taking part. McNeil says not to count Iqaluit out, as the quality of the answers are a major factor as well, not just the quantity.
When we have those meaningful, impactful stories that are shared by our community members, it doesn't necessarily mean that we don't have a chance versus some of the bigger places that may have more votes. So they take into account the quality of the stories and submissions shared.
A few community members have taken part so far. One community member wrote, "The community loves their hockey here." As well, many other clubs and organizations use the arena. Sports are essential to keeping Iqaluit youth engaged and healthy. As well, community members from all ages use the arena. We have speed skating, figure skating, and old-timers hockey. Most communities in Nunavut with hockey arenas are also entered in this competition, and this year every province and territory are guaranteed to have one community receive a smaller $50,000 prize. Nominations close March 1st. Justin Hardy, APTN National News, Iqaluit.
An award-winning documentary called Bad Press is premiering for the first time on television on APTN. It follows Muskogee media reporter Angel Ellis, who fought to protect press freedom on tribal land. This after the leadership of the Muskogee Creek Nation in Oklahoma began censoring their tribal news outlet. Angel Moore has that story.
The documentary Bad Press is a dramatic account of tribal leadership controlling their media after a reporter exposed alleged corruption. Becca Lansbury Baker is the co-director of Bad Press and former employee of Muskogee Media. She says Bad Press was made to uphold democracy and transparency,
so that they can do the type of reporting that, you know, makes them accountable to the citizens. Because after all, those are the folks that are electing your tribal leaders. So how are they going to be educated if not for our own tribal media outlets who are covering our stories?
It started back in 2018 when Muskogee Nations Council repealed the Free Press Act, which caused Muskogee Media to come directly under control of the principal chief and his cabinet. Ellis was fired in 2011 after she reported the alleged corruption. She says that began discussions among citizens about the value of free press.
When we put our very first photograph of our tribal government arresting people for alleged embezzlement charges, and that led to the citizens really paying a lot of attention on the potential impacts that the media could have for them.
Lansbury Baker worked at Muskogee Media from 2008 till 2013 as a writer and editor. She says after Ellis's article, her job was threatened by tribal leadership.
But basically there was this kind of veiled threat of, you need to stop, you know, reporting on the things that you're reporting on, or we're going to can you too.
Ellis eventually got her job back in 2018, and by this time, the citizens demanded tribal leaders stop controlling their media.
And the public was asking the tribal government to unshackle the press and actually let the press operate without that government control. And as the citizens applied pressure to their elected officials, it became a topic that the elected officials could no longer ignore.
Bad Press premieres on APTN on March 28th. Angel Moore, APTN National News, Jabutuk, also known as Halifax.
Some organizations in and around Toronto have band together to support Indigenous survivors of sexual assault. They're organizing a fundraising gala with a focus on Indigenous fashion, spoken word, and teachings. Its aim is to raise awareness of the disproportionate impact of sexual violence on Indigenous and Afro-Indigenous women, trans, and Two-Spirit people. Annette Francis met with a few participants at a recent rehearsal.
Albert Dockstader is new to the style of runway walk.
As a former professional athlete, combat athlete, my runway is usually my walk out to the ring or out to the cage.
But he's thrilled to be a part of an initiative to support sexual assault survivors. Dockstader was a world gold champion of pankration, a mix of boxing and wrestling. His roots go back to ancient Greece. He's now taking on the role of an MC and is also a fashion model for the gala fundraiser and fashion show.
This is my first opportunity to walk a runway and just express myself like that.
And how's that feel to be up there, dude?
It feels really good. I'm excited. I'm super excited. It's something new. It's a bucket list as well. So just really, really excited to have this opportunity.
It's the second dress rehearsal in participation for the White Buffalo Calf woman returning to the teachings event, which is hosted by several Toronto organizations dealing with the fallout from sexual assault. Suzanne Smoke is the organizer of the gala and works for the Muskoka Parry Sound Sexual Assault Services. She says Indigenous people are overrepresented when it comes to sexual assault.
It's about empowerment, it's about about showing how magnificent we are as Indigenous women. There's a whole Afro-Indigenous component because we have a lot of mixed race community members, a lot of our youth, knowing that we go out to the four directions and that there's a place for them and that there's an identity and that they can claim both those spaces and walk with both those ancestries.
According to Smoke, 25 models, 15 sexual assault survivors, and 10 Indigenous designers are participating. Six Nations designer Bruno Henry is thrilled to show his work for the first ever event. With the help of model Christina Rastoul of Dokis First Nation in Ontario.
This is my signature piece. I debuted it at Vancouver Indigenous Fashion Week, and Christina was with me when she modeled for it. And it almost was made for her, almost.
So what's it like being out there like this piece? What's it feel? I know the labor that went into this piece, so I wear it with such pride. I feel honored to be the blank canvas that is able to showcase this kind of work, and I'm just so proud of Bruno.
The gala will take place at the Royal Ontario Museum at the end of February. All funds raised will go towards participating organizations for their Indigenous programming and for culturally appropriate supports. Anna Francis, APTN National News, Toronto.
And we check in with our colleagues at Nouvelles Nationale and over at Investigates right after this break. Chesqua. Well, welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. Clarence Jones shared with us this idyllic early morning view of the Vancouver skyline. We hope Clarence enjoyed his time visiting Vancouver. Be sure to think of us this weekend while you're out and about. Snap a picture and send it our way to share at aptn.ca for the chance to be our next photo of the day. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the east coast, Charlottetown -4, Halifax -6. Kuujjuaq is at -18, Nain -10. Saguenay -7, Quebec City -3. Over to North Bay -4, Sault Ste. Marie -1. Up to Big Trout Lake -12, Sioux Lookout -7. Over to Churchill -15, Puckatawagan -14. Barons River -12, Dauphin -11. Over to Saskatoon -13, Regina -15. Up to Stony Rapids -21, La Ronge -14. Moving west, Grand Prairie -13, High Level -19. Down to Medicine Hat -9, Edmonton -11. Over to Kamloops 2 degrees and Tofino 5. Over to Dease Lake -19, Smithers -10. Up to Rock River -28, Beaver Creek -24. Over to Yellowknife -28, Norman Wells also -28. Tuktoyaktuk -29, Fort McPherson -28. Over to Cambridge Bay -30, Baker Lake -35. Arctic Bay -30 and Igloolik -24. And coming up soon, here is our French news broadcast, Nouvelles Nationales. Let's check in with host Kim Sullivan now.
Hey TR, happy Friday. We have an update on that incident with an Eagle staff at Quebec's National Assembly a few weeks ago. We will also bring you the sentencing of two brothers who left the body of a lassie Tukiyapik dead on their sofa for 6 months. And throat singer Nina Segalowitz joins us in studio to talk a bit more about that art form and an upcoming concert that showcases the powerful immersion into the world of Northern people. That's tonight, 6:30 Eastern.
Thanks, Kim. And APTN Investigates returns this week with an all-new episode. Video journalist Rob Smith returns to his family's traditional homeland in Kincombe Inlet on BC's Central Coast. For decades, the Jawadaynook First Nation has been at odds with a conservation group to get land back it believes was illegally appropriated. They say it's a dispute that may lead to direct action if a solution is not found. With more on the story, Rob joins us now from Vancouver. Rob, can you start by giving us a rundown on what your latest story is all about?
It is a Landback story. It's a story about my home village. They've been battling for about 40 years, now over 40 years. It started as simply wanting an access road. The community is a remote community. It's a flying community, and it doesn't have road access. And so they needed a road, but the problem was it would go through conservation land. Grizzly bear habitat protected by a BC conservation group called the Nature Trust, and this has been a decades-long battle to try to get this road built. That has turned into, we just want the whole land back, get it all back, and there's now a legal challenge. So the backstory to it was once I started digging into it, took me all the way back to the 1800s. So it's a very, very interesting story.
That does sound interesting, and I understand that there's a bit of a backstory on how it all came about. Can you explain that?
Well, we've got to be upfront and say that this is a story about my mother's homeland, my homeland, and so we were very careful, debated about whether or not I could actually do this story. I think we walked that line. I was home. Usually go home after the season to decompress, and I got a personal journey story that I aired earlier in the season. And while I was there, this was coming to a head with the Nature Trust, the dispute, and it was all the community was talking about. And so I just kind of fell into this story and was able to pick it up and was able to learn more about my own personal history with the Djawdin people and what they went through at first contact and at the beginning of colonial occupation of our land.
Mm-hmm. And like you had said, it's been a personal journey for you. I guess, what's your final takeaway?
More things change, more they stay the same. In getting into the history, you see how the expressions of what are you doing on our land were just ignored back then. It gives you that feeling. You see it written, the response to some horrible things that happened. It's just nonchalant. Let's move on. Kind of, thanks for telling us that, but let's move on and get back to business. Kind of mirrors what's happening today with the Nature Trust meetings and back and forth, and the concerns in the community and the needs of the community are just being ignored. And I just saw that parallel. So the theme really is about just being ignored. The concerns are just not even dealt with.
Like you said, it was an incredible journey for you. Thanks, Rob, for your time, and I'm looking forward to your Investigates piece.
Thanks, Jared.
You can catch APTN Investigates A King Comes Ransom airing tomorrow on APTN. And that's your APTN National News for this Friday. I'm T.R. Wheatley. It's been a pleasure to be here with you. Quick shout out to Dennis Ward's mother-in-law, Dory Rutherford. She turned 70 today. Minnow Tipiska, happy birthday. Have a good weekend from all of us at APTN to all of you. Egase, Gitam, Kinanaskamitanawal.